everybody. Baron Hoig with OneChiropractic and Dr. Richard Barwell from Neuroinfiniti. Man, we're pretty deep into this series. We've been talking everything from universal intelligence to the cerebellum to the prefrontal cortex to the limbic system to looking at homeostasis, looking at allostasis, and digging into the pattern of what happens with sensory input, integration, and then motor output. And we've just been really going through this entire process and giving you a lot of theory. And we've been supporting it a little bit as we've gone along with some research and articles. But now we're going to really start digging into what does the research actually tell us? What is the work that's happening out there? How can you stand on everything that Dr. Barwell's been sharing with you with confidence and know that there's something supporting it other than him? And so we're excited about this series because we're kind of really going to put some meat on the bones of what we've been giving you so that you understand and have confidence moving forward with this. So Dr. Barwell, let's dig into this stuff. This is great, great stuff.
Okay, I'll pop up a screen here if everything goes well. And whoop, so where are we?
Put her up there.
Come on, you can do it. There it is. Okay, so back again, remember taking chiropractic from pain to brain and talking about neurologically based chiropractic. I just want to stop for a moment and just talk about this. I started talking about neurologically based chiropractic, just a review, back almost 20 years ago now. Matter of fact, it's 21 years ago. And the reason that I started talking about neurologically based chiropractic, it was in opposition to save our vertebral subluxation bone on nerve movement that was started when back at that particular time. And I had already been doing the research, and I realized that we needed to think about this differently. We needed to get back to the basic here of what chiropractic was all about. And so I'm sort of the founder of this concept of neurologically based chiropractic, which really, like I said, isn't new. This is where we really needed to be to begin with. But what I see now is I see all sorts of neurologically based chiropractic stuff coming out without having it attached to a way to measure it and to be able to show it as real. I'm pleased. My goal was to change the direction of the profession. It's happening, but like most things, everybody starts to get on the bandwagon just because that's the movement and still not understand the foundation of it. So that's why I think these are so important, these sessions, and I thank you very much for making this happen because it's critical right at this stage.
Yep.
So I want to talk about this part called applying the research. Now, all the stuff I've been talking about is basically, there's some research that are involved in this, and I've shared some of the research as to what stress does, as how it creates the abnormal function. That's all extremely well established. As a matter of fact, today we're getting inundated by the fact that stress changes our life and is the biggest threat. That's done. Our homework is done there. What's missing at this particular point is now to have the proof to show that the adjustment actually alters that stress impact. And that's where we need to go with what started with all of this thing. So here's some research. I got to tell you, I can't keep up with my slides with the amount of work, especially the work coming out from Heidi. I mean, she's killing it out there, man. And she's killing it out there being published in the top level publications, stuff that is peer reviewed at the highest level that you can't even get into to be accepted unless you're beyond challenge. And so that's where she's being published. And we have never in our history as a profession had this happen before. Most of our stuff got published in publications that were questionable at best. So I just want to share with some of this stuff, and then I know that we are going to be having Heidi come on and just knock everybody right out of the park with what she's doing and what this means and what it says. So it started with this. Effective chiropractic adjustment on brainwave patterns measured by EEG. This is the work that I did with Dr. Annette Long and Dr. Alva Byers. Dr. Long was a clinical psychologist, and Dr. Byers was a research psychologist with 20 years experience in founding of brainwave patterns and EEG studies. And I had the great luck of getting to know these two and becoming dear friends with them. And we talked about chiropractic because they happen to be big supporters of chiropractic. And we did some discussions together, and I'll talk a bit about that paper as we go on through here. What it was I tried to get it published, and I had trouble getting it published, mainly because of, gee whiz, you go and figure there was some politics involved in chiropractic. And so it ended up in Dr. Ralph Boone, who has been around for a long time. He's now passed. He was head of research at Sherman at that time, Sherman Chiropractic College. He got hold of my paper, went crazy, called me immediately and said, oh my gosh, can I submit this for our paper, our International Paper Symposium? And I said, yeah, I was honored, sure. So he did, and I went and I presented it at Sherman, and it won the best award for the best paper at Sherman. It was being reviewed. When you do a presentation like that, it gets reviewed in live time. Right. And I had tenured professors in the audience from different universities that were following my work. So that's where that thing got so-called published it with the symposium. Next one down, cervical spine manipulation alters sensory motor integration and sensory motor evoked potential studies. And the minute you say sensory motor evoked potential, 50% of the people immediately shut their brain off.
Right.
So like, I don't understand what any of that means. I don't care about it. But you know, from this point, you need to have some sort of idea of how important this paper is. And even if you have somebody that's just doing a synopsis of the paper and saying, this is what it means, that's what you need to do. You need to get hooked into some organization that says, here's the papers, here's the significance of it. Okay? Because a lot of us don't want to do this. I'm not a researcher. I'm a clinician. But need and necessity and opportunity presented itself to be able to look at this. Cerebral metabolic changes in men after chiropractic spinal adjustment for neck pain. But you know what? Spinal manipulation and neck pain, two things that the hair stands up at what I've got left. You know, but all of a sudden, what's the significance of it? And I'm gonna talk about this as we go through. And then we start getting down to changes in H reflex and V waves, follow spinal manipulation. Heidi will go nuts with this one. And she will have more fun with you than I can ever have. But I want to talk about the significance of these things and what it means. Here's more. And if you take a look, Marshall, Murphy, and Havik, Murphy, and Dr. Murphy is now up in Canada, and she's working some research with CMCC. She gets it, and I'm waiting for stuff to come out from her. She was Dr. Havik's mentor, and so they get it. They understand what's going on. She's just got to get in a position where she can publish the work that's going to continue to back this up. The problem with researchers is this: first of all, they have to have a research project. Okay, so they've got to establish what the parameters are. That's not easy. That's a tough thing to do. And then they have to raise the money to do it. Chiropractors don't support researchers.
No, never have.
No, drug companies support research like crazy because they're making a ton of money. But chiropractors, who are the only ones that are going to benefit from this research, don't support the research. Send Heidi some money. Join her program, for gosh sakes. She doesn't ask for much, but she needs to have a constant supply coming in so that she can do all this stuff. That's right. Okay, so you can see that this just goes on and on and on. And then there's Bernadette Murphy again in the bottom one, and Heidi in the bottom one. This stuff, and there's probably 6 to 7 more major pieces of research to back up what we've been talking about, already out there, already published in very high journals that I haven't even mentioned here, and that's why we need to get her on it and get her talking. So here's the thing. The effect of chiropractic adjustment on brainwave pattern is measured by EEG, my paper that I put out. And you know, the significance is this. We did well over 100. We probably had more like 200 pre and post EEGs done. Unfortunately, the computer got destroyed. We had managed to salvage 4. So at least we had 4 to do it. Like a single study doesn't count for much. It only sends points of direction. But 4 subjects, 4 tests is worthwhile looking at. So this study suggests that the chiropractic adjustment has a direct effect on cortical brainwave patterns. We started out doing this by first of all, saying it's a null hypothesis. In other words, our experience was we were all sitting around one night. There was like 5 or 6 of us together, and I proposed to Dr. Byers and Dr. Long, I said, you know what? After all this discussion we've been having about brain stuff, I think that the adjustment changes the brainwave patterns. It was not met with a lot of applause because what I did was I went into their area of expertise as clinical psychologists and stomped on their flower garden. And so Dr. Byers said, and Dr. Long said, why don't we find out? And God, I love her. She's still with us. He's no longer with us. So what happened is we took the people right there. We hooked up an EEG that they had. It's now an old style, but at that time it was current. It was like top model. What happened then, he did his little relaxation. We did a 2-minute EEG. Then I took him, I gave an adjustment. We waited 20 minutes. It was just an arbitrary amount of time. It was just like, okay, let's wait 20 minutes. Then we did a post EEG, and we saw significant changes. The term significant is very important. That's a critical use of a word in research, significant. He said, well, maybe it was just us, maybe it's the room, maybe, he's a researcher.
Right.
So we did a null hypothesis to go, first of all, to prove that the adjustment did nothing. So we took them with us and we started doing EEGs, pre and post, using 3 different approaches, using a torque release, a manual adjustment, and a light touch. And you weren't allowed to do anything more than 2 applications, 2 segments or 2 applications on each patient. We waited the 20 minutes and then did post. It wasn't very long into it that he said, we're getting significant changes here. So the null hypothesis that it doesn't work is out the window. Now we need to figure out what it's doing. So the next goal was thinking it created more alpha waves because it introduced healing. Mm-hmm. Okay, which is a logical place to go. So we went to that and we discovered that, no, we got massive changes across all the frequencies. And as we kept doing this, and we would do a report, and we would do them on Friday and Saturday, and then Saturday night, Dr. Byers would give us a report of what he'd seen, and he'd start putting up the slides. And there was more than once that he would literally run from the back of the room and say, you people don't understand what you're doing. Says, you're getting massive changes in brain function with one single adjustment that would take me between 50 to 200 sessions of neurofeedback to get those kind of changes in brain patterns. 50 to 200 sessions by one of the world experts in doing neurofeedback that we were seeing in a single chiropractic adjustment. I want to tell you, not only did it put goosebumps on my arms, it scared the heck out of me.
Sure, yeah.
Because I said, what have I been doing to patients all these years?
Yep.
I thought I was just pounding down the high spots and removing pressure off the nerves. I had no idea that I was changing the way people related to the world. Scary stuff. Post adjustments, cortical patterns appear to move towards improved organization and balance. Now, you would think, talking at a chiropractic college to a room full of people on this subject, that it would start a wave.
No, I know.
It started a wave, all right.
Yeah, the wrong way.
Yeah, the wrong way. It was like a tidal wave coming at me saying, we don't want you around saying this.
Yeah.
And of all the places to be doing it was at Sherman College, which was the, and still is, the traditional approach. And, I understand it. That's where they stayed. But it's time for us to all to sort of step back and change. I just saw something that was posted today that I want to comment on, and it was that, neural impulses aren't important. It's all about the mental impulse. And because DD and BJ talked about the mental impulse. I'm going like, that was what their theory was at the time, but you need to understand how all those things really work. It's not about anything of that nature. It's about how that nervous system takes information in and puts changes out. So it's all part of it. If you're just doing the mental impulse, that suggests that it's only emotional.
And that's it. And that's man's problem, right? We have to pare things down to a level that we can understand and own. And when we do that, we eliminate the magnitude of what God created and how he created it to operate. But because we can't understand it, we've got to dumb it down and own a section of it. And it's just unfortunate.
It's just something to think about and to try to keep it in balance when you're looking at this stuff. Cervical spine manipulations alter sensory motor integration. What's the significance of this one? And this is one of the first ones that they put out, and it followed my paper. And I took exception with the publication out of New Zealand saying this is the first one that shows it changed his brain. I wrote to him and said, no, it isn't. But this one is a whole lot better. And as a researcher, what you do is you look for somebody to come up with evidence that supports your particular approach.
Right.
This didn't just support it. This knocked it out of the park. And so here's what the significance of this was, 12 subjects. And the words that are used here are very important. In order to be accepted within that scientific research level that she operates in, that high level, it's the stratosphere, she has to use terms like manipulation, okay? And you'll see a couple of these things that are in here, and treatment, that are very important, because that's the only way that these other people can relate to this information. They don't understand adjustment. That doesn't mean anything to them.
Right.
But we can start to substitute that as we get more specific and more papers that support chiropractic approach, because there's a difference in specificity and intent between manipulation and adjustment. And that's up to us to clarify.
I agree.
So this study suggests that cervical spine manipulation may alter cortical somatosensory processing. It's what I said, changes the cortex, and its result changes downstream. And sensory motor integration, there's that wonderful word. These findings may help elucidate the mechanisms responsible for the effective relief of pain and restoration of functional ability. Forget relief of pain, look at that. Mm-hmm. Restoration of functional ability. That's the key. Documented following spinal manipulative treatment. Whoa, holy smokes. This is when I fell in love with Heidi. And, all due respect to Bernadette, I haven't met her yet. Maybe I'll fall in love with her too. I'm easy, let's face it.
Yeah.
Cerebral metabolic changes in men after chiropractic spinal manipulation for neck pain. Again, using the terms for acceptability. But look at this. We have MD, PhD, MD, PhD, MD, PhD. They're all over the place in there. There's one chiropractor up there, but it's an OC. He's actually not really a chiropractor, but he's doing spinal manipulation. Significance, increased uptake or increased activity in certain areas of the brain measured by glucose uptake. Okay, after the adjustment. They measured 12 people twice. Inferior prefrontal cortex improved. Improved function after this. That involves risk aversion, language production, verb usage, targeting, overall brain function improved. The anterior cingulated cortex, autonomic function, emotional, that directly hooks up with the limbic system. Blood pressure, respiration rate, awareness, pain regulation, reward anticipation, motivation, rational cognitive functions improved. You notice it says cortex, that's above the limbic system. It has to reach the cortex to be effective overall, to change the pattern, because the cortex is where the memory pattern is stored. Right. Middle temporal gyrus, somatic memory, language, visual perception, sensory integration, facial recognition, all improved. Areas of activity that decreased in the brain, cerebellar vermis. Oh man, it slowed the cerebellum down. It gave the cerebellum an opportunity to go into relaxation mode, not defense mode. Motor control connects the brain, spinal cord, eye movement, planning, movement, timing, posture. Remember I talked about the cerebellum and how it creates the vertebral subluxation? Well, when it starts to operate at a lower level, it's able to handle that and adapt. Visual association cortex. All of a sudden they could say how they felt much clearer. That's that 10 centimeter method of measuring how your response is. And they were much more accurate on that. And it also improved digestion. Why? Because it turned on the parasympathetics and turned off the sympathetics. Neck manipulation. How powerful is this stuff?
Yeah.
That's where it's published in Alternative Therapies. Okay, changes. Now, this again is some of the work from Heidi. And I say this, the previous research papers focused on the effect of the adjustment on the input or the sensory side of brain function. The last paper focused on the effect of the adjustment on the motors. And when she started doing this research, on this one, I got to hear her in Sweden when we were presenting together. And when I was listening to this, I had to put a seatbelt on my chair. And I'm just absolutely stunned with this. And then she, in all of this presentation, came up with this statement that said, we also discovered that there was a lasting effect for at least 20 minutes of an adjustment on the brain where the brain stays open for more information. 20 minutes. Isn't that an interesting time? Sometimes you just have to trust where you've been led.
That's right.
Okay. And I recall, I turned around and I looked at her husband, Glenn, who was sitting at the back of the room. And I smacked my forehead and I went, whoa. And then he looked around the room and he went like this.
Yeah, most of the people missed it. Yeah.
Didn't even respond to it because they lived in the box of vertebral subluxation and they saw the world through those glasses.
Right.
And so this was information that had no meaning to them whatsoever because of their limited amount of thinking.
That's so huge, right? I mean, think about that for a minute. If the brain's open for information for 20 minutes post-adjustment, that's really powerful to know, right? If you do other things in your office, whether it's, oils or whether it's any type of a rehab or a stimulation, or you want to train the body to say, this is the appropriate thing. And so it can lock and create new patterns. You'd think you'd want to know that, right? You'd think that information should change the way that you actually engage with your patient.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you think BJ was smart?
Yeah.
He had people up to resting after his adjustment up to 2 hours.
Yeah.
Okay. He said 20 minutes is max, the minimum amount. Well, what happens if you lie down on a nice soft bed after getting an adjustment, you're there for 2 hours? You're going to fall asleep. Mm-hmm. You're going to take your brain out of beta, put it into alpha. Oh, this is really comfortable. I like this. And now you're down into theta where healing starts to happen. That's why you got the great responses.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that, actually, because I didn't make that connection till just now. But some of the old guard, right? Some of the guys that have been practicing forever, they would have people come from other towns and they would literally have like a sleeping area where patients would come, they'd get adjusted, they'd go sit in these recliners. They'd actually build rooms in their clinic that overlooked like woods and stuff. And they would sit and they would just relax and then get adjusted one more time before they'd go home. And you're right, that's when some of the massive miracles were happening, but it was that resting period. And now that we understand neurologically what's happening is you've interrupted that pattern, you've put it into theta where we know the healing happens. And yeah, that just makes so much sense now.
So now we have to take a look at, instead of rehab, sending somebody in to get on a rowing machine, which is beta activity and not necessarily the best idea. Yeah. Now we need to take a look and say, what do you do after an adjustment to help that brain move back to pattern? So there are several things, and we'll get into that. There are several things that you can be doing in your office that also are income centers, because what they do is they support the intent of the adjustment so that you can be doing other things to help these people along. And we're learning more and more and more. And that's why that Neuro Life Center is so phenomenal. They've got incredible equipment in there that allows us to do all sorts of things to retrain brain after the adjustment. Nothing is more important than the adjustment. Nothing is more important than that.
Right.
So that's where we have to go.
That's
Let me see what we got. So other studies suggest that chiropractic does. It improves, and I love this, cortical function and balance, autonomic nervous system function, risk evaluation, language skills, motivation, thinking, memory, improves the output to muscles in highly found even more than this, 45% improvement to muscle activity. That's why these guys that are Olympic athletes get an adjustment, go out there and set new records.
Right.
Because their system is working at a highest level. Digestion, we know it improves quality of life. That study that was done in Britain years ago was phenomenal. And they did a 3-year follow-up and found out those people that had chiropractic care had continued to improve. The others hadn't. It reduces stress level in the inflammation process, which is the foundation of every illness and disease. It reduces muscle tension. It reduces fatigue, and it reduces pain. So where did we decide that we wanted to focus?
Yeah.
On pain reduction, and to heck with the rest of this.
Yeah.
So that's how silly we've been in the profession. Okay, so that's the last of that particular slide. So just as a sort of a summary, all of a sudden, now we've changed direction. Now you get the understanding of how all this stuff was created. And now when you say, vertebral subluxation was created by stressors, we understand the process behind the creation. And when we understand the process, then it's easy to start to understand how the adjustment starts to unwind it.
That's amazing. I mean, it's great stuff. And I tell you, I said this from the very beginning of this series, and I want to reiterate it again. All these people that are quote unquote evidence-based, and we've used that as a label for a certain faction of our profession that pretty much have always believed or have stated that the subluxation doesn't exist and all that is dogma and all that kind of stuff. What I love about this process is we're using evidence. We're using the highest level of evidence, and it's evidence that's looking for the right thing. I think you would agree with me. When you get into research can be very dangerous on what it is you're actually looking for. If you're not looking for the right thing, you're going to find stuff to support your opinion. So what I love about this research that you presented is they were asking the right questions, right? They were looking at it saying, well, let's just see. Let's not automatically assume, let's create a hypothesis like your null hypothesis. Let's just assume it doesn't. And let's try to prove that it doesn't. When we find out it does, then let's understand really why it's doing what it's doing. And so those are the power of what's going on with people like yourself and Dr. Havoc and a number of other people in the world that are really into this specific topic. But I want, this really brings our polls together, right? It brings the radicals from both ends. Some of them, they can stay out there. I don't really care to have them in our camp. But at least the majority of them that are looking for true information, this information brings everybody to the center to say, okay, this isn't the same conversation we've had before, but you cannot deny it. You cannot say it doesn't exist. You can't say that it doesn't work to the level that we're saying it works. And when we change this conversation from pain to brain, and we start looking at the motor patterns, and we look at the stress response, it's unbelievable at how this actually starts connecting with the way that the public perception already has of us, which is where the disconnect has been, where they don't truly understand what chiropractic does. So I'm just so excited about this process. And I know where we're headed, you're going to start getting into some tangible things of what docs can do in their practice, what the adjustment legitimately does, what you can start doing in your practice to have this effect, how we can start measuring it, how we can start tangibly using this information to change the way you function in your space, which is what we've been leading up to this point. So Dr. Barwell, thank you so much. It's just been an incredible journey, and I can't wait to get to the last section of this with you. And then, I want to remind those of you watching as well, if this is striking a chord at all, this information can be brought to your state. We can bring speakers into your state to talk about this stuff. Dr. Barwell and other people, he'd love to do nothing more than travel this country teaching this and getting people to understand it on a higher level. So reach out to us at OneChiropractic. I'm more than happy to introduce you to the people you need to be introduced to get Dr. Barwell or others into your state to start teaching this information and to start taking this from a CE perspective, if you will, and adopting a new mindset that we can get involved in your states or in your group, whatever group you might be attached to. So I know that I'm speaking for you, Doc, but I'm sure you're good with that.
Oh, that's my goal. I'm out to leave a legacy of giving back to this profession what I got out of it. And that's a heavy burden on my shoulders to say, I love chiropractic. I love what it's given to me. It's given me a purpose in my life, but I need to pay back, and that's what I want to do.
That's awesome. Well, we appreciate that. So reach out to us with any questions. Get ready, buckle up as we move forward in the next parts of these series. We're going to start giving you some real tangible things you can start doing with this information that we've given you. Share this information. Get it out there. We want more people to be a part of this conversation. We love and appreciate you. God bless your day.